Okay, Chair, we're streaming live on YouTube, so I'll hand over to you. Chair, you're muted.
Start again. Good morning and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Poverty Working Panel on Monday, 21st of March, 2022. I'm your Chair, Councillor Megan Armstrong. I would also like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live stream. Based on a decision of the Council to continue virtual meetings until 11th of May 2022, I would like to remind both members and public attending or watching that this Council has delegated much of its decision-taking power to our senior officers. The meeting can be viewed live online and will be recorded. Please bear this in mind throughout the meeting. Therefore, may I remind colleagues to be careful with their language and that the Code of Conduct applies throughout our meeting. We reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant disrupting the meeting by whatever means. As this meeting is dependent on internet connection and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. If we are not able to reconnect after 15 minutes, this meeting will be adjourned and reconvened at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for further details. Could colleagues please ensure your microphone is muted when you are not speaking? This will help avoid any disturbance from background noise. Could you also keep your points short and not interrupt when someone else is speaking? Should you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and it can also be viewed on the website at www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of the members of the working panel. Can you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you are present, please mute your microphone again. Sarah, can I hand over to you, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Allen. Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Desarim.
Present. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Vixen.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Whibley. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think that makes us just about quorate. Am I right?
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
Thank you. So item 1, public speaking. Do we have any members of the public registered to speak at today's meeting?
No, we don't, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And apologies. Could you please tell us what apologies have been received? Thank you.
Yes, I have apologies from Councillor Jarvis and Councillor Woodward.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 3, declarations of interest. Declarations of interest will be noted by raising your electronic hand. Please state your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to, if it is a personal or a prejudicial declaration, and state what exactly the interest is, please. I'm just looking, I can't see any declarations of interest. Can you, Sarah?
No, don't seem to be any. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. Item 4, minutes of the previous meeting held on 31st of January 2022. The draft minutes of the previous meeting held on 31st of January 22 have been circulated. If any members have comments on the minutes, please raise your electronic hand. If there are no electronic hands raised, I will take it that you are happy to receive and accept the minutes. Once again, I can't see any electronic hands. No. So that means the minutes are accepted. Thank you very much, everybody. So item 5, update on loan sharks. Libby Jarrett, service leads, revenues, benefits, customer services and corporate fraud. We did touch on this at the last meeting, and Libby said she would give an update on loan sharks and how the council are helping with that issue. And a copy of her report is included with today's papers. So Libby, if I can hand over to you, please. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you, Chair, and morning, everyone. I mean, I'm happy to go through it, but it does provide a brief update of where we are. Apologies for not being able to do that back in the previous meeting. So we are working closely, as the briefing highlights, with the illegal money lending team that deal with loan sharks. It is good news in some ways that we don't have any active cases in East Devon, but that does come with a big health warning because often they're not reported. So that doesn't mean to say that they're not active in the area. And obviously, I think we're all concerned with the pressures on household bills and the risk of people turning to loan sharks going forward. One of the things that we need to do is to try and understand, because people don't want to volunteer that information to people. It's an issue that that Citizens Advice struggle with as well. So is to have some training so we can understand the signs of whether people are caught up with loan sharks. So we have started some of that training off. It is free training provided by the illegal money lending team, and we are looking to roll that out further across different services as part of the vulnerable debt toolkit that forms part of our corporate debt policy that was updated last year. So that training will link into that. We have updated our website and it is now included on our hub about reference to loan sharks, and also an update went out into the residents' newsletter. We're also looking at exploring becoming partners with the illegal money lending team, but we just need to understand what that means from our side in order to become that partners with them. The training we're having is the same training that Citizens Advice have for theirs. So that's really the update. I'm happy to answer any questions. A big thanks really to Sharon Church, who's our Benefits and Financial Resilience Manager, who's done a lot of the work on this and been making those links. So happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Libby. I'm just having a look to see if anybody's got a hand raised. Nobody got any questions on that? Are we all happy? John. John, would you like to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, is it great work being undertaken? I noticed loan sharks were on BBC this morning, some reference to people using illegal sort of money lenders more frequently. So recognising that people do sometimes have to borrow to assist them purchase or just kind of get by, really. Are there any credit unions that we could be recommending, or do we consider that we perhaps should set up some hardship arrangements ourselves? I know it's quite hard to administer these sorts of loans to people, but I suppose my question is, and I should know the answer, but are there ethical lenders that we could recommend to people that really do need to borrow long or short term?
Oh, thank you, John. Yeah, Libby, have you got any answers for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we did look at, and some of the interest, though, charged on credit unions isn't actually that low, so it's often can be higher than what banks charge. So even though it's cheaper than loan sharks, it's it's not necessarily cheap lending that people can get through high street banks. So it really, it's a, and so we sort of we're a bit hesitant about promoting that, because it's not necessarily always the cheap, but it depends on people's lending credit. And I think there was also another issue, and I can't remember, and Sharon might, if she's available, remember one of the other concerns we had with credit union. I think there's also the way people access those accounts, and there was some other issues, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But I'm happy to come back on that, unless Sharon can provide any extra. Yeah, sure, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yes. The problem with one of them was there was two credit unions in the southwest. One of them was in Plymouth, and they have actually closed business now, I believe, but they only did everything by person, so you had to travel to Plymouth. And the other one is West Country Loans Credit Union, I think, actually. And so we need to just do a little bit more understanding, as Libby said, about those rates that people are charged. I do believe West Country can access loans online, so that they can do everything online there. So that one would be the better option, but we haven't explored it fully yet.
Oh, thanks, Sharon. And is it true that there's a maximum, because credit unions, I mean, well, it's not a credit union, West Country Loans, presumably, is it? Is that?
Yes, no, it is a credit union. Yeah,
that's a credit union. Okay.
Yeah,
because they're all about money being paid in. It's that relationship, isn't it, about how much money's being paid in as to how much money they can take out. So there's often, I guess, there's a limit as to how much people can borrow. Am I right in thinking that?
They do different types of loans, but yes, and they encourage saving as well. So what you pay in and how much you can borrow against that. And the smaller loans, so they do some for things like school uniforms and stuff, but the smaller loans typically have the higher interest rates attached to them, and the bigger loans have less. So it wasn't quite as straightforward as what we were thinking initially, but that doesn't mean we just needed a bit more time, or we need a bit more time to explore that in further detail.
Yeah, okay, well thank you for that. I know Marian's waiting to speak, but Libby, did you want to jump back in there for a minute?
I was just going to say, I'm happy to take that away as an action, is to explore and come back and provide an update, either to the next meeting or to issue something subsequently via self-chair if for to be circulated.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you, Libby.
That helps.
Well, thank you. So Marianne, thanks. We've got Councillor Rickson.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether this is possible, but are there any videos out there which would help to educate people to make sure that they don't get themselves in these unfortunate circumstances, that they are desperate enough to go to loan sharks? If there aren't any videos already available, is there perhaps something we could do as a council? Because I think, I might be wrong, but I suspect that a lot of the people who would need this information are probably more au fait with social media than they are with reading reports on the council website. So they would need something which would be perhaps much more immediate and easily accessible in that way. Is it possible for us to do something ourselves to help them in that way?
Okay, thank you, Marion. Good question. Libby or Sharon, do either of you able to answer that?
So our website, it's linked to, although we've got the Loan Shark link on our hub, it actually links into the illegal lending money team, and they do have videos and information on there. So our website just points them to illegal money lending.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that Marianne's talking about, is it, that sort of advising people you know,
Yes.
what not to do. Yeah.
It gives all the details there, and I do believe that there's some videos on that as well.
Right, lovely.
That
Okay,
website.
thank you. Is that all right, Marianne? Is that okay for now?
Yes, because I think that it's important to try to guide people in the right direction and get them to recognise the problems they're in, instead of digging themselves into a hole. Is to try to get them to recognise the issue and stop buying things they don't need, or whatever it might be. Somehow we've got to get the message across.
Yeah, it's about being proactive, isn't it? Thank you. Yeah. Libby, did I see your hand up again? Oh no, John. John? Yeah.
Chair, I've just clicked on the link in the report, and when you go through, there are videos on the illegal money lending site, as Sharon's indicated, and they, from a quick look just now, they look quite useful.
Oh, good. Oh, thank you for that. Right, good. Any other questions from anybody to Libby or Sharon on that? Or shall we move on? Well, thank you, Libby. That's great, and Sharon for updating us on that. And yes, if we can look a bit further into credit unions and so on at a future meeting, that'd be good. Or just a report that we can send out. Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you. So we now move on to item 6, the energy briefing update. I'd like to welcome Sharon Church, who we've already met, Martin Prue and Jodie Harding, and invite them and Libby to present their updates. You should all have received their briefing paper for this item. If members have got any comments or questions, could I please request that you ask them after all 4 updates have been given? Thank you. So first of all, Sharon, I think you're first on the list, Benefits Manager. Thank you very much.
I am, thank you. So good morning, everyone. I think everyone is aware that there are difficult times ahead, and the pressures that residents are going to be feeling on their household incomes with all the higher costs, especially around energy. We've certainly been helping a lot of people with their energy costs over the winter through the Household Support Fund, and alongside that we've continued to work with private sector housing and extra community energy, so that we can ensure that we're supporting as many of our residents as possible in the long term, as well as helping with those immediate needs. So today we wanted to give a joint update to tell you more about the work that we've been doing and how we're going to continue to link up in the future. So following feedback from members on it not being easy to navigate, I'll find information on our website. One of the things we developed is the Financial Support and Advice Hub. And that hub is the central place where people can access information and easily see how to apply for funds. And we will continue to refine and develop it, but hopefully it's now much easier for residents to find what they need. So at the moment, it includes sections on homelessness, help with household bills, the loan sharks and home improvement grants. And we're going to be adding a section, I think, on ways to reduce energy bills and costs shortly. So when a resident approaches us for financial support in benefits and financial resilience, especially out of one of our discretionary funds, even if that's not initially about energy, we do try to refer them to eco, and we do that via private sector housing. So someone could ask for help with a shortfall in their rent through discretionary housing payments, or perhaps funds from the Household Support Fund as they need help to afford food. And as well as financial resilience officers, we've started to bring in some staff from benefits who deal with discretionary housing payments to identify where extra help might be required. So the staff across the teams will ask a number of questions when discussing their income and expenditures, And from that, they can identify if an eco referral will be beneficial. Martin's going to explain a little bit more about the process from private sector housing side further on in the briefing. But the reason that we follow that process is because private sector housing and eco are the experts rather than the financial resilience or the benefits team. Up to the 4th of March, the Household Support Fund has made awards to 326 households, and we've paid just over £34,000 on energy and water. The vast majority of that has gone on energy. We've also used £6,221 on essentials linked to energy and water. And out of those 326 households, 268 have asked for further financial resilience work, and around 20% of those requested that they needed help because they were unable to afford their energy for their homes. Now we've referred 149 households to ECO, and out of those 117 have engaged with them. Some cases are still open and we've got more to refer across, but to the end of February, the total savings ECO have found for 80 households is just under £94,000. And those savings range from £20 per household right the way through to £21,000. And that £21,000 was because ECO helped to get the LAD1 funding for the resident. So as well as the tariff checks, they'll also give energy advice during their telephone interview on how to reduce costs, such as only boiling the kettle with what water is needed, right through to help sourcing the funding for any improvement works that they've identified. And we've, so as well as those measures, to try and keep properties warm, we've also linked up within ECO around white goods. So for example, old fridges that are broken or old, they can cost a lot to run, which obviously increases energy bills. And we refer those cases over to ECO as well, and they will identify if new white goods are required. They were able to access funding from LEAP for those, but when that ran out, we agreed to pay the cost of those white goods through the Household Support Fund. And so ECO will do the assessment for those in exactly the same way that they would to access the LEAP funding. And they also make sure that the white goods that are supplied also have good energy ratings as well. So I'm going to pass over to Martin now, and he's going to be able to tell you a bit more about the process from private sector housing side.
Thank you, Sharon. So now, Martin, welcome. You're the Technical Officer for Environmental Health and Car Parks. Is that right?
It is, yes, Chair. Thank you.
I can't even see you.
No, the camera's not working.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's all right. We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Good morning, all. Yeah, I just wanted to just give you a sort of brief overview of our role, with the financial resilience team. So in private sector housing, we enforce the Housing Act, and predominantly around housing conditions, which are on privately rented properties, but also can be on owner occupied as well. So with that, we often get complaints from privately rented tenants, and with these, often it's either that we're getting involved when it's too late, where they've either lost links with their landlords and they've been given notice to quit their properties. So we wanted to try and get in earlier, to try and to educate tenants, to help them, support them, to look at how we can link in with financial help before it gets to that stage. So when So when sort of Libby and Sharon spoke about how we can sort of link in with sort of private sector housing last year, we thought it would be a really good idea that we can sort of kind of broad it right across each tenure, to council properties, to owner occupiers, to the private rented housing association tenants as well. So so under our sort of what we do is that so when we receive a referral in from the financial resilience team, it's automatically then sent to Exeter Eco, and they'll carry out their visit. So if it's a council property, we would see if there's anything on the email that comes from the financial resilience team, there's anything there to do with any sort of repair issues or anything like that. So we forward that on then to the repairs team, and then they will then make some inquiries with the tenants to see what those problems are. With owner occupiers, again, we would then make a referral to Exeter Eco, but also as well with the financial resilience team, they may pick up some other issues by chatting to those residents on the phone to them, maybe some other issues within the property. And what we will then do is pick up that information, and it may be that we can help them, support them with other sort of grants that we've got through the Better Care Fund, which is where we administer mandatory and discretionary grants. So we may be able to look at grants for them. We may be able to look at loans through Lendology. So again, there's different things there, and it's all around, you know, sort of essential repairs on their home. And then we move on to the, you know, sort of like the privately rented and housing association. Again, we are picking up on a number of referrals that are coming through from the initial inquiry with the financial resilience team, that they're picking up that sometimes heating's not working, they've got damp and mold, you know, sort of windows broken, things like that. And so what we then tend to do is that we'll work with them, we'll give them a call, we'll check their EPC, Energy Performance Certificate, to see what sort of a rating that is, and first of all, is it allowed to be rented out if it's below an E? So we'll look at that, and then a colleague then will complete like a bit of a sort of, you know, a form with the tenants, and see if there's anything else that we can pick up there about the property, and what else we can possibly help them with, and if there are things there that do need to be sort of really the landlord's responsibility, we would advise the tenants then about the procedure in reporting any complaints to the landlord. So we try and get that dialogue with them going, educate them on what their responsibilities are, and then hopefully we can, you know, sort of get it resolved informally, or if not, we may have to go down the route of enforcement. But like I said, we've only had a few where we've had to go down sort of more of the enforcement route, but majority of them are being sort of dealt with informally. You know, that they're making contact with their landlord, they know what to say to their landlord, and it's definitely improving the sort of like the journey for our tenants. So again, and also as well, when the Exeter Eco team go out and carry out these visits, they will also come back to us if there's anything else they pick up on their visits. And again, this also again could be other repairs they're picking up on, coming back to us, and also as well, they've even referred people on to Care Direct, where they may be eligible for disabled facility grants. So again, it's more sort of, you know, footfall into people's homes, find out a bit more about them, how they are living within their property. So it's definitely, you know, sort of the communication has improved, you know, no end in how we're linking in with, you know, with our residents of East Devon. So I mean, so far up to date, we've had we've had a homeowner after a visit from Exeter Eco have gone out there. They've spoke to the energy officer out there, and spoke to them about concerns with accessing their garden, and they've been referred on to Lendology, and they're looking to get a loan, like I said, to carry out some repairs to their garden so they can access it. So it's another one. We've had another person where we able to make referrals back into financial resilience team, where we've got a resident where because predominantly a lot of my work is around the sort of properties that are in sort of poor condition, owner occupied and privately rented, and this particular person, they've got no flooring to their bathroom, it's collapsed, no electrics, and so with this one we're looking at how we can support this person, and we're hoping to sort of do a joint kind of working funding through the financial resilience to support this person in maybe trying to get the electrics sorted for them. Again, another one where again joint working, where funding, we are looking to, this person's got no heating, disabled gentleman, he's got no heating whatsoever, and we're able to access a grant for this person. Again, referral from Exeter Eco, grants to cover the first time central heating, but there is a shortfall there to cover all the cost. So we're hoping that the shortfall may be covered through the financial resilience team to cover that. So again, it's just really good sort of joined up working, looking at different options, how we can support sort of our residents. And another case where particular person where we've had to help clean up the property, got it cleaned up. This person's got no heating in there whatsoever, so we was able to access a grant for heating all of the property. We're able to access a loan for him because the electrics were all dated, and the kitchen was pretty much non-existent. So we were able to obtain a loan so he's got clean area to prepare food. He's got up-to-date electrics, and also we've also arranged a disabled facilities grant for a wet room and a stair lift. So again, it's just improving again the residents sort of life, and also for carers to go in there so he's not going back and forward from hospital. So but yeah, I mean, it's with the work that we're doing, I mean, we give a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of our sort of residents in supporting them with looking at all these options with grants and financial help. But we know, like I said, the bigger picture is some of these that are struggling, with mental health, anxiety and depression. And if we can kind of help them that little bit, may shed a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for them so that they can start making better decisions, and help, and hopefully that they accept the help that we're able to give them. I think that's all for me. Thank you.
That's great, Martin. Thank you very much. I noticed that Maddie's hand is up. Maddie, is it anything urgent, or can it wait until everybody's spoken and then bring it up?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to wait, Chair.
You're right. Okay, thank you very much. Right. Well, thanks for that, Martin. It's amazing how joint working can make things so much better, can't it? Well, for yourselves as officers, but also for the public. And it's really good to hear about all that. So now I'd like to pass on to Jodie Harding, Principal Environmental Health Officer for Private Housing. Jodie, if you'd like to carry on, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to start today by really thanking Helen Wareham, who is our Public Health Officer, who brought me to the Poverty Reduction Panel this time last year to talk about the role of environmental health and private sector housing. And this led on to us working collaboratively with Libby and Sharon and Exeter Eco. So I'm grateful for sort of Helen, and want to recognise Helen's work in getting us to this panel. So thank you very much. And I think our role in financial resilience and private sector housing really cuts across the entire council plan, through the poverty reduction strategy, through the climate change strategy, and our public health role. And it's that golden thread that pulls us all together for improving our residents' homes and better communities, in addressing climate change and building a resilient economy. So we have a small part to play in that across what we're doing in these projects. So thank you very much for letting us come to you today. In the greater context of private sector housing, I just wanted to bring in some of the other roles that we do to support our residents as well. And so we recognise that there's an increasing pressure on household budgets, private rented sector. The rental market is very aggressive in East Devon at the moment. Rents are very high. We've got heading towards increasing fuel poverty. And I think this year we're definitely going to see the choices that residents will have to make between food and fuel. It's important to recognise that there's only a limit that what we can help our residents. I can't change the energy tariffs for our residents. Hopefully on Wednesday we'll get more from the government around that, but it's important to recognise that we are limited in the authority that we have, but we're obviously, as you've heard today, contributing significantly to supporting our residents and our communities. In the private sector housing, we do have quite a wide role in supporting our tenants and our residents. And so it's important to recognise that we also try very hard to bring our empty properties back into use through our empty homes officer. It's important to increase the availability of affordable housing in the district. We also work very hard to increase the quality of our housing in the private rented sector. And we've heard some cases from Martin today. And it's important that we continually improve the energy efficiency of those properties to support our residents. One project we started this year was around the damp and mold cases that we get in the winter periods. And what we did this year was set up a new project which fed into the financial resilience team and Exeter Eco, so that we could support those residents that came to us and to complain about damp and mold. We then looked at their entire their financial situation by giving them feedback into the financial resilience team, and Exeter Eco was able to give them energy advice as well. The private rental sector is also enforcing the minimum energy efficiency standards in the private rental sector and working with trading standards. This is targeting landlords with rented properties of an energy performance certificate of E and F. So that's the really low, poorly performing energy performing households. So we're doing an enforcement project and also helping landlords access funding for energy improvements. And also part of our Housing Act responsibilities, we're trying to reduce our the direct housing costs through energy efficiency measures to reduce fuel poverty for tenants and owner occupiers. And this is through promoting green home grants. The current one is LAD2 funding, which closes in the next couple of weeks. And we're working on a Devon-wide project with Devon County Council and Exeter Eco on the new round of funding, which is Sustainable Warmth Programme. And this targets the energy efficiency of homes across Devon. It means that we're able to give grant funding for retrofit projects. if it's okay with the chair, I've got a small report from Exterico, who were unable to come today because they've got a couple of training courses that they are on. So our partnership with Exeter Community Energy is ongoing. They provide community energy advice through a telephone assessment. They also do drop-in clinics. One of the most successful ones is in Honiton Library, once or twice a week. They also do talks and events across East Devon and where they work. They provide frontline worker training, and they do home visits for both LEAP and for Exeter Community Energy. So these are energy advisors supported by the charity, and they're giving that face-to-face advice to residents. They have increased their size, so they have more energy advisors, and they're going to have 2 full-time advisors for East Devon from the 1st of April. They now have the support of a manager, a project support officer, and 10 home energy advisors, a community energy advisor, engagement officer, and a benefits advisor. And they're looking to increase by recruiting 2 more energy advisors as well. They are providing more advice on retrofit. So this is the energy retrofit projects. So they will be able to provide more information to those homeowners and to those residents when they do their home energy advice. They wanted me to share with you some of their recent successes. They have won the Vulnerable Customer Support Team of the Year for the Southwest in the Energy Efficiency Awards. They've started drop-in clinics in the districts. They're at Exmouth and Sidmouth on a weekly basis. They've been attending trip events in Honiton, Dunkeswell and Rockbeer, and they're on the lookout for more regular venues for drop-ins. So if members have any suggestions for a regular venue for Exterico, then I would be grateful to be able to pass it on to them. Exterico have been supporting Honiton Health Matters with their funded energy projects this winter, and they have the energy advisor in Honiton every week since December. So they're engaging with individuals who are coming into the drop-in centre. The Exeter Energy Company are also helping with the Community Energy Champion project, and they're just providing training for 4 energy champions. One's based in Axminster, and they'll be starting a new drop-in clinic from April. They've also funded another person, they say, for East Devon, and that's going to cover the Exmouth area. So they say we have funding for another 10 spaces across our patch. So that's their entire area where they cover, which is Mid Devon, Teignbridge, Exeter and East Devon. So they're happy for more applications in East Devon for those community energy champion. So again, if members have any residents that may be interested in training up to become a community energy champion, then I'd be grateful to hear from those members. And their final point was partnership with the financial resilience team and private sector housing. I do have a little bit of data from them. It says since the 1st of April 2021, they have supported 810 households in the East Devon district with 101 home visits, and with the average saving from a home visit of £1,135, and the average interaction cost savings is 572. So moving forward, the partnership with Exterico will continue. They will be covering the Honiton Town Council's Yes One networking event at the Beehive on the 2nd of April 2022. they're also taking part in Catherine Corsley's Green month of June. We're not sure what it's called, but we'll also be involved with talks and events during that month that Catherine's organising. Again, for Exeter Eco, there's a big emphasis this summer on energy consumption, education. Home energy consumption has got to reduce. It's the only way of cutting bills. I'll come back to that towards the end of my talk. They are also piloting a water consumption project. So they're trying to obviously encourage residents to reduce water, and they're looking at how to fund that project throughout the summer and into the autumn. They're also trying to get funding for more home visits, because as you can see, they can help more residents with more savings at a face-to-face home visit. So they're trying to get some funding for that. They're also preparing for the winter, they say. The Exeter Community Energy are working in partnership with Devon County Council in the Sustainable Warmth Programme. This is the new round of funding that the government's given. We put in a bid to the government, and we've got around £2 million to spend in East Devon District Council. It's a fabric first approach, so it's based on the retrofit of residents' homes, with then the option for delivering renewables. So Devon County Council, the project sponsors, Exeter Eco are delivering that project with the support of us. Exeter Eco are supporting a training programme for frontline workers on the 29th of March, and that's available. You can book on that. It's a face-to-face meeting in Exeter, and it's called an Energy Crisis Network event on the 29th of March. I can circulate details in the future. And so that finishes my report from Exeter Eco. I'm not really in a position to take questions about Exeter Eco, but I can get back to any panel members if you have any particular questions that you may want to ask them. I just wanted to summarise very quickly our sort of next plan really going forward. As I alluded to, we can't help with the energy tariffs for our residents, but what we can do is we can encourage our residents to reduce consumption. So from our point of view, we'll continue to support any grant funding for homeowners or landlords, but a lot of this year will be spent on messaging to our residents around energy consumption and encouraging people to save energy and water. So we're going to do that in a number of ways. We are going to do a lot more messaging with our comms team to put articles into the residents' newsletters. We're doing a lot of internal communication, so we're engaging with our own staff and colleagues so that we become resilient and people become more aware of what we're doing within our own organisation. We're supporting Exeter Eco in roadshows and drop-in advice, such as at Honiton Library with the Honiton Healthy Matters, where Libby's team are sending out a leaflet, and Libby's going to talk a bit about this in a couple of minutes, and that education leaflet is going out to about 47,000 residents in East Devon, and that's going to have top tips about reducing energy consumption. We're engaging with our housing associations so that we can talk to them about retrofit projects and also financial resilience, and dealing with complaints. We're working with the sustaining tenancies through the landlord liaison team, and how they can support through the financial resilience project. We're looking at reporting key measures into the poverty dashboard, and that's really a summary of what we are going to try and achieve in the next year. Really more messaging to support residents. So I'm going to finish by handing over to Libby. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jodie. A lot of information there, a lot. I'm sure people will have many questions about that. And also the report from ECO. It's a shame that they couldn't be here, but I understand why. So Libby, would you like to carry on with your report? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Obviously this, we're talking about energy, so it was important to include the government's energy rebate scheme. It's actually called council tax rebate. So on the 3rd of Feb, the government announced a package of support known as the energy bills rebate to help households with rising energy bills. And that included the £150 council tax rebate, which billing authorities, ourselves, are responsible for administering. In addition to that, there's also the £200 discount that will be provided in the autumn on people's actual energy bills. And that's for domestic electricity customers, and that will be paid back automatically through your energy bills and clawed back over the next 5 years. So that's technically that's going to be repaid back. But this £150 council tax rebate that we're administering doesn't have to be paid back. This is direct funding to support residents who are in properties. So it is linked to council tax data in determining eligibility. So it's for properties that are in council tax bands A to D. It also includes certain bands, certain properties in band E, where they are in receipt of the disabled reduction on their council tax that technically brings them back to a band D. So they are included as well. I know a number of members will be pleased to know that this isn't including second homeowners, and this rebate isn't going to go to empty properties. So it is using council tax data to determine that eligibility. The qualifying date is as at the 1st of April 2022, and it's one payment per household, regardless of the number of occupants. And the aim is that where we hold direct debit details and they match the liable person, that will be paid direct into people's bank accounts. And for those who we don't have bank details, or where maybe you have a third party payer on behalf of a council tax payer, and so therefore they don't match, it will be done through a claims process. And the scheme will close on the 30th of September 2022. So just going back, there's two elements to this scheme, and it very much mirrors the business grants. You get a main scheme where the government set the criteria, and that's what I've just described now. And then you get a discretionary scheme for us to consider support for those in either higher bands, or where we may want to provide top-up payments to support those in the existing bands A to D. The maximum payment, though, that can be provided under the discretionary scheme is £150. So we cannot provide higher levels, but we can provide up to. So we could even set a lower amount. And that's within the discretion of the council. So that will need to come, in order to determine our discretionary scheme, that will need to come to members. The government are providing funding. So for the main scheme, their initial indication is 7.1 million. It is in the briefing paper. And for the discretion, and that will be, if we spend more than that, the government will top it up, because it's a standard scheme. So we're administering against government guidance. So that's the indicative figures that they anticipate. For the discretionary scheme, though, that is fixed amount of £269,850. If we don't spend it, we have to give it back. And if we spend more, then that has to be funded through East Devon's funds, because they won't give us any more. And that scheme, for the discretionary scheme, closes on the 30th of November. So any unspent monies as at that date will need to be returned. So under the main scheme, there's approximately 47,000 households that will benefit from that support. It does include, I forgot to mention, it is in the report, we have 4 categories of council tax exemptions. Students, properties that are occupied by those under the age of 18, dwellings that are occupied by people whose class is severely mentally impaired, so they're exempt from paying council tax, and annexes occupied by dependent relatives. They are also, provided they're in bands A to D, they will also be eligible for the support, even though they don't actually pay any council tax, because they're actually exempt from paying. So again, because we wouldn't hold bank details on those, they will need to come through the claim process. We've got, as I said, 47,000 households that will benefit, or circa that number, that will benefit under the main scheme. And then we can support approximately about 1,792 households under our discretionary scheme if we were to give £150 payments. Just looking at our figures, we know those claiming council tax reductions, so we know those people are on low income. We've got 381 households in bands E to H that are on low incomes. So if we were to support those, we would be left with about just over 1,000 people or 1,000 households we could support within the discretionary scheme. So it's a significant amount of work to get this live. We've got the guidance, and I have put a link to the guidance on the paper. I think we've got the guidance on the 22nd of February, and frequently asked questions came out last week. So we are working up that scheme. It sounds quite simple to just pay money into people's bank accounts. There's quite a lot of work to make that happen. It's not something we can just push a button on our software to do that. That is something we've actually got to have system support in building a separate database in order to be able to pass those through for payment, but also to extract those that aren't eligible or those where the account details don't match the liable person. So the teams have been working on this now for a few weeks so that we can get and cleanse that data so that we know. So hopefully when we get to the 1st of April and we've taken the first of the April direct debits, we will be able to validate then those that we will then be able to reimburse, and we anticipate payments going out later in April. So as Jodie touched upon, one of the things we've got to do as part of this energy rebate scheme is to contact residents. There'll be those that we're paying by direct debit that we need to let them know that we're going to use their bank details. We need to include some details in the letter that if they're overdrawn, that they've got the rights to appropriation so that that money can be protected so that they can use it. And also to make sure that if their circumstances have changed, then obviously they would have to repay it and just sort of set out the scheme eligibility. So as we've got to write to households, we thought it would be a really good opportunity as part of the work, the wider work we're doing in around the education about how people can look at reducing their energy, or potentially look at how they could save energy to help with rising costs. So that's all I was going to mention on the energy rebate. So in the main, we'll be looking to get the main scheme live, and hopefully payments will start going out the door middle of April to late April, and then towards the end of April, beginning of May, we'll be looking to launch the discretionary scheme. So that's sort of the timelines. And we are working with our comms team, and as Jodie touched upon, we are encouraging residents to sign up to the residents newsletter so we can keep them up to date on the energy rebate, but also other information around household bills, and where we're doing that wider work that Sharon and touched upon earlier. So just to sort of summarise, really, having heard from Martin, Sharon and Jodie, clearly, I think we're all extremely concerned about the global energy crisis and the rising costs, and in particular, that disproportionate impact on those on low-income households and obviously with other rising costs of household bills, national insurance going up, that's going to really cause an impact for those already financially struggling with affording day-to-day essentials. We wanted to highlight really the concern we have for those residents in our rural areas that don't have access to mainstream gas, and they'd be reliant on oil, and that doesn't have the same protection of energy cap rises that others do. So the cost of heating oil is extremely high, and because the minimum order is 500 litres, we're particularly concerned about the impact that that's going to have on some of our residents in the rural areas. And that's something we are working with Jodie, Martin and Sharon over about whether there's what wider work we can do on that. And in the summary, we're looking to explore with Devon County Council and Eco-Lendology about potential opportunities around that, because some of the barriers for people buying oil, in particular those on low income, is the fact that you have to have 3 months in order to pay monthly. You've got to have paid 3 months in advance, and for those on low incomes, that will be a real barrier. So it's just exploring about opportunities and work we can do around that. There's concern really, and I'm sure you picked up, there may well be further measures announced in the Chancellor's budget, but although obviously the £150 plus the £200 will help, but costs are still rising, and members may want to consider whether they would be wanting to recommend to council to lobby for further support, although you may want to wait until the outcome of the spring budget to see what further measures get announced. And whether there's something around that heating oil should be subject to the same price caps that you get with gas and electric to protect our residents, in particular in the rural areas, from those rising costs that are being impacted immediately. And I think that's all. We obviously, Jodie's touched upon about the work we're doing about building on the hub that's already started. And I think, and we recognise that there's more work we need to do around that to get that even better. We're also looking at our poverty dashboard, which I know is also on the agenda, about how we can feed in energy data and how that can, how we may be able to bring things back that can inform our future policy over some of that work. So this work there's lots of things that we've got on our sort of radar to look at this year. Obviously, my priority within my team at the minute is to get this energy rebate scheme live. But yes, there is definitely concerns over the rising costs of household bills. But hopefully what's come across today is there's a lot of collaborative working that's going across the teams, and actually some of that is achieving really positive outcomes, really mindful that it isn't just about giving people support with that immediate crisis. It is about looking at that wider underlying issues, and hopefully you've heard of how that work and that wider work that's going on is going to help in the work that's around the energy issues, but also that wider work around addressing the root causes of poverty, which is key, and it's a key aim of this poverty strategy to do that work. So I welcome any questions and any views from members in terms of other support or measures that they have and would like to for us to consider. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Libby. I think we all need to take a big deep breath after those presentations. It's a lot of information. I'm really glad you put together this report. So I've been looking at it as you've been speaking and going through the various points from all of you. So I'd just really like to thank all four of you, Sharon, Martin and Jodie and yourself for this input. It's really, really important, especially, I mean, we talked at the last meeting about and it'll be coming up later, about the future priorities for this poverty strategy. And I felt that it was really important to put this item in now, because this energy crisis and financial crisis is happening now. And so we need to know, straight away what actions we're taking and how we can help people. So thank you very much for all the work you've done for today and all the continuing work you're always doing. So now what I would normally do is I would ask non-members to speak first, but as I think I'm just going to take them in order, if that's all right with everybody, because I know Maddie's been waiting a long time and one or two other people have. So Maddie, if I'd like to ask you to speak, Councillor Chapman, thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Yes, 4 very good reports there. Very, very interesting, very, very worrying. There's something else that is concerning me, which friends have flagged up further along the coast, and that is a lot of private landlords are now asking tenants to leave and going to holiday lets. I know that 2 properties in Exmouth that have gone this way, which is a bit concerning, because obviously when the tenants leave, they've got nowhere to go because of our housing list. And also they're going to be in dire straits. And also those properties then do not come under our curtain, if you like, for improvements. And no one's sort of touched on it. I don't know if it is going along the coast, if we're going to lose more private landlords. Have the team got any idea on this? Because I think it could be a great concern. It's developed over the pandemic, obviously, and the prices that they get for these holiday lets are more than they would get in 2 months' rent. So I can see why some people are doing it, but it is giving me a bit of cause for concern here of how we would handle it. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Maddie. Jodie or Martin, are you able to respond to that from Councillor Chapman, please?
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. The private rented sector is very, very complex, and we have a couple of issues in East Devon. We have holiday lets that are going into private rented accommodation and therefore not suitable for the private rented sector because they're effectively planning, in terms of planning and of the energy efficiency. They're just holiday lets, and we have the reverse, which was what the questions was about private rented going into holiday lets. Again, it's really important that in the next year that we start trying to address those through our minimum energy efficiency standards enforcement activity. We are planning, depending on resources, to look at these properties, but it is a general challenge for us to try and keep up with these houses and landlords that are floating in between the private rented sector, and it's a huge challenge. It's challenging for us, and it's sort of challenging for those tenants. The landlords are just really profiteering. As you know, our private rented sector, the rents are considerably high in East Devon. So it is a challenge for us. We don't have huge amounts of resources, but we can only really tackle stuff when stuff comes to our attention. Sorry, I don't really have obviously a definitive answer, but we can only do what we're authorised to do.
Thank you. I think Libby, sorry, members, could Libby just jump in there? I think she's wanting to say something about this. Am I right?
Yes. So over that issue about whether we've got any indication about numbers of properties that are moving into sort of second homes, holiday homes. We did actually do some work back in November last year on the data was as at October about the number of second homes we had and the number of self-catering holiday units, which would be properties that have been taken out of domestic use. So we do have that data. We can certainly update it again, so we can do that comparison so we can see if it's increasing at all and what the movement is on that. So I'm happy to take that away as an action. I think the other thing that's worth highlighting is in Wales, they are trialling a 300% council tax charge for second homeowners. And that may well be a measure that sort of comes into England, but at the minute that's being trialled in Wales. So thought members might be interested to know that, because of course that could then persuade someone to not retain that second home, or at least they're contributing more into the local economy. So I thought that would be worth highlighting, but that's only being trialled in Wales, and there isn't necessarily any guarantee that would come into England. But again, that might be something that might be worth lobbying if members felt or could consider asking council to lobby over.
Thank you, Libby. And with that, presumably Wales is its own country, so it can do that. So that's a national government, a Welsh government initiative, presumably. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. So it's only our government that can do anything about it. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea, and I'm sure Councillor Rickson will well agree with that. But yeah, that's brilliant. It should be automatic. That, as far as I'm concerned, that should be automatic. It shouldn't even be a question about it. But there we are. Thank you very much. Let me see who's next. Councillor Rylands, Eleanor, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this huge piece of work, Libby and everybody, and Jodie. Thank you for mentioning as well that the problem of rural oil boiler owners. I wanted to add to that LPG. LPG has all the problems of oil in terms of having to fill up the tank, but it also has the added problem in that you're linked to one particular provider. So you don't have any chance to shop around or do group purchases like you do with oil. So, I mean, with oil, you can go on boiler juice and maybe, get clubbed together with neighbours and find a slightly cheaper price. You can't do that with LPG. LPG was meant to be the solution about 30 years ago, but it's definitely become a problem now. So what I really specifically wanted to talk about actually was the problem that we probably most of us have in our houses in Devon, and that's damp. Because damp increases the feel of cold remarkably, and it causes, as we know, all sorts of knock-on problems to people's health and to the health of the building, not least with the growth of black mold, which is very, very bad for people's health. Now, do you feel, do people, the members of the panel feel that we're actually doing enough to tackle the causes of damp, i.e. the fabric of people's buildings, you know, the buildings that we own? Are we sure that those buildings are damp proofed enough? Are we sure that the gutters are all working properly, aren't blocked? Are we sure that people are not living overcrowded, maybe because their circumstances have changed, because maybe they have got married and had a small baby and they're still living in their one-bedroom flat? So are we doing enough to tackle all these things? Because damp is actually even more pernicious than cold, because it causes a lot of health problems, and it allows the proliferation of all sorts of things that cause people tremendous health problems, and also rot their things, to be honest. So it's not desperately cold in Devon. It's not so cold that people would die without heating, but I really feel that the damp problems are far, far worse, and I just don't feel like we're tackling them at all. And you really have to live in a sort of a slightly drier country to realise how horribly damp our houses are, because of where we live, because it rains all the time. And water really has to be managed properly in and around houses, you know, on the top of houses and around the houses. Are we doing enough? And are we counselling people enough on how to avoid damp in their houses if it's, you know, the bits that are human generated, like not drying your clothes on radiators, for example? You know, there's lots of things that can be done, but are we counselling people, and are we actually having a look at our own housing stock enough to work out whether or not we could be doing more there? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Eleanor. Yes, that's a really good point as well. And I'm thinking about who can answer this. So it's Jodie from Environmental Health, and I know Jo Garfoot is on the call today. I don't know whether she's got any, you know, thoughts about, you know, our new properties and so on that are coming up on the list. And you know, so anybody who can input into this. I don't know, Jodie, do you want to say anything first of all about that?
Yes,
please?
Chair. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can address it from the private rented sector and the owner occupied. So yes, we do engage with our residents and communities around damp and mould. And in this year we started, we called it a winter resilience project. So from October to March, we get a huge increase in the amount of complaints around damp and mould. So with our financial resilience project, we were able to look at this in a holistic approach. So we, if anybody complained about damp and mould in their property, we put them through financial resilience and put them through Exeter to get advice and information. So we started that project this year rather than just look at it as a damp and mould complaint. We feel that that's been really successful because we've been tackling sort of again the root causes of why the tenants may, or the owner occupiers may have damp and mould. Under the Housing Act, we have a risk assessment that we can do, but damp and mould generally comes out as a low risk category. We understand that it does have long-term health effects on those residents. So we usually have to engage with landlords and that resident or that tenant to tackle these issues. And damp and mould can come from different sources. So we have to really look at each individual case-by-case basis. And sometimes that is the resident's lifestyle. So we will talk to them about condensation, for example. And sometimes that is how they're drying their clothes, how they're heating their property. So these people may be experiencing poverty, fuel poverty. And this is where we've been able to really work collaboratively this year with the financial resilience team in Exeter with their home visits to help these individuals. And then sometimes the property is in disrepair and there's penetrating damp. And that's where we have our enforcement activities through the Housing Act to ensure that the landlord addresses those issues. A recent example was a leaseholder, again an unusual situation, but the leaseholder, they're responsible for the repairs of their own property, but we undertook a damp survey so that we had an understanding of the complexities of that particular complaint. And then we were able to go back to the freeholder and say, well, this is the damp proofing that needs to be done to the property. So damp and mold is a very complex situation. It's the relationship between the person and the house. And so, yes, of course, we can do some more. And again, this theme of messaging and engaging with our residents around damp and mold is something that we want to sort of increase through our communications with our residents. We're also funding through LAD 2 and LAD 3. There's a sustainable warmth project that starts on the 1st of April, which replaces LAD 2 funding. So these are all the retrofit projects that we can offer owner occupiers, and that will be a fabric first approach. So this will be addressing those really important areas around retrofit and improving the structure of your property before you start to put in renewable energies. So that will be addressing energy and energy efficiency. And we also do the energy company obligations, which is a very similar fund, and that's a fabric first approach. And we're waiting for the launch of that. We're waiting for the government to give us further guidance on that. So of course in Devon and East Devon, we have properties that are pretty old. They're not particularly well insulated, and we have the weather that goes with that. We have the West Country weather. So we try to engage as much as possible through the complaints process. Of course, we can always do more if we had more resources, but we don't have the more resources. We have to just deal with the complaints that come in, and we'll address those on a case-by-case basis. With regards to East Devon Council tenants, then I can't really comment. I understand that they're my colleagues on the call will be able to comment on that.
Thank you very much for that, Jodie. And I see that Amy, our housing service lead, if people don't mind, if I just jump to her, because I think she might be wanting to speak on this item. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, good morning, panel. So just picking up then, and actually I was going to, before that question came through, I wanted to mention this anyway, because I think this is an area within our housing service and our housing stock that actually does really, really concern me. And that's mainly due to the condition of the stock. And as we know, our stock is aging, it's in need of a major investment across the board. And therefore, this is one particular area that we are really concerned about. And one part of that is the carbon efficiency of our properties. And this very much links closely to some of the issues around damp and mould that we've been talking about. So one positive thing is that we're, as members will be aware, we're now embarking on our stock condition survey. So that is going to start giving us a much clearer picture on the challenge ahead. That's a long-awaited piece of work, as we know, for various reasons we've had to put that on hold. But I am pleased to say that is now pressing ahead, and in the coming weeks that's due to start. What's going to come back from that, as we know, is a lot of data, and what that will then bring us is some very difficult decisions that we're going to need to make about what we do with stock and the extent of the retrofit measures that are going to be required, and obviously ultimately how we are going to pay for that out of the housing revenue account. There is already some good work being done, and members will be aware of the decarbonisation social housing grant funding that we were recently successful in, just over £600,000, and that's going to start targeting some of our worst properties. But it's safe to say that there's a massive challenge ahead, and that really is a drop in the ocean. So I suppose my issue here is about what we do in the meantime, where we know that we have properties that are in this category, that they're poorly performing properties, and it's about understanding what we do about it in the meantime. As I say, so one quite extreme measure in that could be that we don't let those properties if we think there are, bordering on significant issues that are ahead. Now, obviously, when we do a void inspection, we look very carefully at the property, but there are significant investments required in a lot of our stock. So we can't always do that at void property. At void stage, we've then got the competing issues of the need for the housing and to get somebody in there in terms of the housing list, as already mentioned this morning. So it's multi-layered and it's very complex. It's not particularly easy to solve, but in line with many of the issues that the panel has been discussing this morning, my housing leadership team have been starting to consider this very carefully in terms of what we do in the short term. And it might be that we need to offer our own residents some increased financial incentives around helping them with soaring energy costs that they have, and that it's particularly bad in their property because their property is not as energy efficient as it could be, if that makes sense. There's a whole piece of work there that I think we could probably link in with the private sector housing team to have a look at some innovative solutions that could maybe see us through whilst we look more carefully at the longer term solutions. In terms of damp and mould in general, I think it's fair to say I'm dealing with a number of formal complaints myself, which are based around damp and mould, and it's one thing I often talk to members about. Some of the things that Jodie has just mentioned, we're doing the same. We have a leaflet, we have information on our website that we try and sort of educate tenants with. The maintenance surveyors are regularly having these discussions when they're out on their site visits on a day-to-day basis. That work is going on all the time. There was members may well have seen this, but the Ombudsman recently has published a really excellent report on damp and mould, and it's called, the title of this report is It's Not Lifestyle, and it hones in exactly on some of the issues that you just mentioned around we're all too quick nowadays to sometimes blame it on the resident in terms of how they're living in the property, but what we need to do is fundamentally look at the fabric of the property to understand where this underlying cause of the damp and mould could be. But I would recommend you having a look at that report if you're interested. As I say, it's something that we're starting to look at in housing now, and there's some really excellent recommendations about how social landlords can proactively deal with damp and mould moving forward. And I have suggested that we need to potentially present a paper solely on this to the Housing Review Board at their next meeting. Just finally, I know Jo is on the call anyway, but Jo and I have already been discussing this issue with regards to the properties that Jo will now be out there trying to find for us, and it's certainly an issue that we need to be aware of, and Jo may want to comment on that directly in terms of the Housing Task Force. And I'll finish there, Megan. Sorry, I've gone on a bit there.
It's okay, Amy. Could you just repeat the name of the Ombudsman report you just mentioned, or can you send it to?
So I'll send a link in the chat, Megan.
Yeah, if it could go, because I don't look at chat really. We're not supposed to look at chat when we're in meetings. So if you can just send it to us somehow, and then hopefully Sarah will pick it up and put it in the minutes or something. Yeah, thank you. Jo, can I just ask you to quickly come in? Thank you. I know you've been waiting, and apologise to the other speakers waiting, but it's just whilst we're discussing this particular issue about damp and mould. Thank you, Jo.
Yeah, I mean, I think thank you, Megan. Nice to see you. For myself and the new team, I think obviously our biggest remit is to increase the amount of social and affordable housing that we've got. And obviously part of that will be that any homes that we build or purchase in the future will be carbon zero. So that will greatly reduce the costs on any tenants. Also will eradicate the concerns around damp and mould and the health issues that they have. As Amy's already alluded to, we've already been discussing how my team will support the work of the stock condition survey, and we will follow that along basically, and we will be looking for the sort of the worst offender homes, if we can call it that, So homes that have got really deep issues with them and therefore may well need to be re-provided. As Amy says, there is a potentially quite a substantial fiscal impact of that. If some of our homes are found to be so bad that actually we don't want to re-let them, then obviously we will lose the income into the HRA, and we will also lose that home. So it's a really difficult balancing act to make, but we've already been out exploring. We have 8 sites which we're currently working up with a potential view to building some new homes on those. We're doing an extensive scoping piece of work over the next 6 to 8 weeks to again highlight more potential development sites, in the hope that we can get cracking with some of the building, and then as the stock condition survey travels along and we discover that some of our homes are perhaps no longer fit for purpose, we might be able to have something else to offer our tenants. But we're going to be putting in a really robust options appraisal process. Anytime any property becomes void, we will push it through an options appraisal process. So I think that's basically what we will be doing to support Amy's team, really, in making sure that we can make sure that all of our homes are fit for purpose for our tenants. We know that we have difficulties. It's a very ageing stock. We have significant issues with damp and mould, as does every other housing provider with stock of this age. So yeah, so that's it from me. So thank
you very much, Jo, for that. And just getting back to Eleanor, I'm hoping that's provided a few sort of, not answers, but some good responses. I've had a good old discussion about that. And
thank you, Megan. I'm really pleased that they're on it.
Yeah, you know, we realise it's an issue, but it's not an easy fix, is it? It's just not an easy.
Yeah, it's almost more of an issue than energy. Well, it's not than energy efficiency, but the cost of energy, because you're effectively pouring money into a hole in the ground, really. If your house is damp.
Yes, of course. Yeah, big issue. Thanks a lot for raising it. Anyway, that's great. Right, we've still got quite a lot of speakers. So I've got, I think, I don't know whether I'm right, Sarah. I'm just going on my list. Was Councillor De Sarum next, do you think?
Yes, he is. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce. Thanks.
No, at all, not at all. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Chair. I wanted to look at item 4, specifically with the link to the poverty dashboard, future engagement with residents and communities. And I want to offer my comments and a few suggestions on that. In particular, the first one that I wanted to work on or talk on was develop billing and digital engagement. And I wanted to link that to the 1.14 of our original plan that we set forward for our strategy. Our strategy says that we're going to support digital inclusion sessions for council tenants, leaseholders and older residents in sheltered housing schemes and more widely in the community, and by into training sessions. So I'd like to, this was meant to be completed by around about September 2021, I think. So I'd like to ask this committee to investigate and find out how many numbers of digital inclusion sessions were held in community centres, the number of digital inclusion sessions were held for older residents in sheltered housing, and the outcome for those attending the sessions. The reason why I say that is obviously if we're going to move towards digital assistance, particularly in billing and news items, I think we need to know about that. And my other one was for the future measures to report back to the panel, because I noticed on item 4.4 addressing the high cost of housing improvements.
Sorry to interrupt you, Bruce. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about here. When you say item 4, which item 4?
Item 4 of our paper today, Megan, on page 11, when it talks about future engagement, and it talks about digital billing and stuff like this, where it goes on to mention this. And I wanted to know, obviously, how we were going to manage this. I'm not
sure what you're referring to. Can anybody help me on this, please? I'm feeling a bit lost at the minute.
Where it says develop billing and news items through the East Devon.
Which paper are you looking at?
the one that Libby's put forward today, she talked about page 11, develop billing and news items through the East Devon app. And then I'm looking at our original paper that we submitted some time ago for the poverty action plan, the anti-poverty strategy and action plan, which we discussed at previous meetings. And on one of the items was 1.14 to support digital inclusion sessions. So I just wondered if we could discuss how many digital sessions have been held, given the fact that we want to develop billing and news items through the app. The point that I'm trying to make is that we need to obviously educate our community to actually go digital. That was the real key message that I was trying to put across, because it's linked to our plan. And the other point that I was about to explore, which has gone to the Housing Review Board, I think in October, was the development of a new business strategy plan for further council affordable housing programmes, because I think that's linked to the poverty dashboard, basically, which we should hear more about. So those are two areas that I've had a look at based on the report that Libby's provided today, and I'd be very grateful, Megan, if you had any more thoughts on it, because I think we've touched on it on the 4.3, which is identify opportunities to reduce energy consumption. So we have touched on that this morning, but we haven't touched on the objective for develop a new business strategy, unless obviously the Housing Review Board has done that back in October. So those are the areas which I thought we might be able to touch on this morning, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to raise them with you.
Okay, thank you. Wow, I feel as if I've been knocked over by a bus. Sorry about that.
If it's any consolation, Chair, I don't understand what Bruce is talking about either.
It's just got a bit confusing because Bruce is referring to other documents which we don't have in front of us. I think that's partly the issue. I don't know whether Libby has anything to input into that, or Jodie, the digital inclusion, or whether we should just wait until we look at the poverty dashboard. I'm just wondering whether we should handle it under that item. What does anybody think? I wonder whether John has any thoughts on that.
I think we're doing energy briefing at the moment.
Yes, yeah. Are you happy to leave that a minute until we get to the poverty dashboard item, Bruce?
Yeah, we could put it to the poverty dashboard. I apologise if I raised it at an inopportune moment within the report, but I hope you will find it of use. Thank you, Chair. I know
you're always very good at reading up about things before meetings, so you've left me a bit lost there. I'm sorry about that. But if we can bring your item up again under the poverty dashboard bit, that'll be great. Thank you. So now we've got Councillor Rickson. Marianne?
Thank you, Chair.
I'd hesitate to say this at any point in a meeting, but I realise the time is moving on. We've got another couple of items still. So if we can make it fairly brief, I'd appreciate it, but I don't want to cut you short. Okay, thank you.
Well, my query about damp and mould has been dealt with. The problem that I picked up was in Martin's presentation, which was talking about various issues such as heaters not working, electrics not working, and things like that in the private sector housing. But doesn't the government require inspections for refugees coming in from Ukraine to make sure that properties are suitable? Don't we have the same powers with regard to rent to ensure that in a private rented sector that in general they meet a required standard? And don't we have a register? Or maybe we do, I'm not aware of this. Then Jodie mentioned ECO working with Devon County Council on the Sustainable Warmth Programme. And I think he mentioned quite a high figure of funding, but I didn't quite catch what it was because there were an awful lot of stats that were coming through. So I'd be very grateful if we could have some of this information after the meeting, because a lot of it I just didn't manage to write down straight away. Then with regard to council tax, 3 times the council tax for second homes. Gosh, I can't remember what my question was. No, I'll have to come back to it. I can't remember exactly the point I was going to make about that one. Sorry.
That's okay. That's enough. Thanks, Marianne. Jodie, did you want to come in on any of those points that Marianne's just raised? Please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yes, we do enforce electrical standards, gas safety standards, and minimum efficiency standards in the private rented sector, and we do an element of advice, information, signposting to grant funding and enforcement. The case that Martin is talking about is an owner-occupier, and we're helping that individual with the conditions of their property. So yes, that's what we're here for, to generally improve housing in the private rented sector through the various regulations that we have, and we do mainly reactive complaint work, investigations. So yes, we do that. In terms of sustainable warmth project, as soon as I have more information, and it's a Devon County wide this particular project, so there will be an element of marketing and information going out to residents. So at this stage, it's a case of watching and waiting for that retrofit project. And in terms of the other grant funding, then the government is in transition from April to July on another grant funding project, and we're still waiting for further guidance on that. I'm trying to message internally through our staff newsletters, and through our residents newsletter as well. So if there's any other way that you feel that I need to engage with you as councillors, then please let me know.
Okay, thank you, Jodie. Marianne, is that all right for now, or anything else?
Well, I'm just concerned that Jodie's just confirmed that we actually are reactive with regard to housing and the condition before they're rented. We should be proactive to make sure they're suitable before people are even allowed to rent them. After all, they're going to be making a lot of money out of people, and we should be setting the conditions up front to make sure that people are moving into properties which are entirely suitable. I mean, to have places with the electrics or floors missing in rooms, I find that absolutely astonishing that they can get away with this.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. Jodie, what's the process? Is there a process in place to do that? Because I know when you were speaking earlier, you talked about the lack of resources, and for certain things you were only able to react when people complained. Is this the same with private sector landlords and so on? How does that work? And can you be proactive before the properties are being used, or is that not possible?
So we're unable to offer proactive visits to landlords. They're the legal entity that is responsible for their own making sure they're compliant with all legislations as anybody else is, whether that's you driving your car, anybody that is subject to any law. We're working with property agents so that we're improving working with property agents that are dealing with landlords. We will obviously give landlords advice and information if they come to us. One of the biggest challenges which I would ask members to consider lobbying our local MPs would be a landlord's register. At this stage, we don't know who our landlords are. We can use an element of council tax data to try and find our landlords, but because there's no national register of landlords, we don't know which properties are privately rented, and we don't know what landlords are out there renting their properties. So yes, unfortunately, because of the amount of private rented in E7, we obviously can't provide a proactive service. We are reliant on tenants coming to us.
Yeah. Sorry, and this has just triggered what I was going to say about council tax, and Libby mentioned about the Wales example of going for 3 times council tax. I think it would be far more effective if we were considering going down this route, if we were to liaise with other councils in our area and have a joint push to do something about this, because I would imagine Cornwall will be well up for it because they've got a real problem with second homes. So does North Devon. And so I think it would be much better if we could push as perhaps Devon and Cornwall as a whole to try to get something done.
Yeah. And that's down to us as members to do that. You know, any lobbying. So that's something to discuss with the leader and so on, and see how that can be moved forward, and perhaps with the chief exec.
Yeah, it would be more effective if we did it through multiple councils rather than just.
I know. Yes, I understand that, but it's still members that have to do it. You know, that's the way it works when it comes to lobbying. So we as members have got to work out how to do that. Yeah, but it's a good idea. I certainly agree with that. Yeah. Thank you very much for that, and thanks, Jodie. Let's try and move on now. Councillor Allen, I know you've been waiting a long time. Mike, sorry to keep you waiting.
That's all right. I'm delighted to hear that Marion Rixon's proposed idea of lobbying, which I would fully support as well. Get us together lobbying, and maybe that could be a proposal from this committee to council.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you very much, Sharon, Martin, Jodie and Libby, for such an extensive report. And John's head must be spinning trying to make sure this is all coordinated. And so was Simon Davey. It's such a complex issue. What I'm very pleased about is that there is money coming through to help alleviate some of the rises in energy costs. Ultimately, I'm sure that retrofitting both our properties and and local housing is the key to this. And so I'm looking forward, John, to more reports on how this could be done so that we can encourage what you're doing so well and trying to get people aware and financing good retrofitting. I also would love to see the Housing Task and Finish Forum that Dan Ledger is supposed to be organising, but it's only met once in 2 years, that should consider how we can push forward this retrofitting and specification of housing development, because that is the key to energy control. The houses have to be either retrofitted or built with sufficient insulation and sufficient equipment to keep them warm and safe, especially when you're dealing with people who are handicapped or disabled or old and frail. And I'm increasingly getting the feeling that I've got to do this too, because I'm getting into one of those categories, if not all three. One of the things that I do recommend is that we take a lobbying move on the heating oil side, and we actually write again to council and to the government about capping heating oil and LPG, and trying to make sure that perhaps this committee looks in future at some of the rural poverty issues, which are quite profound and increasing. Yes, I think that Bruce was right about communication. I know that he started pulling in something we planned to do maybe 6 or 8 months ago, but it was on the item 4 here. And the complication is getting the message through. And certainly work that we're doing with Honiton is certainly getting the message out. Now, Citizens Advice Bureau and people like Money Saving Expert have all sorts of ways of saving energy and saving money. I'm delighted with what we're doing. I mean, saving somebody £21,000 on their heating and energy bill is profoundly excellent. So I'm just delighted with the work that officers are doing. What's causing me a bit of confusion is there's such a complexity going on that what I'd really love to see is a briefing to Main Council about this high quality work that's being done on the whole poverty issue, and particularly, since it's highly topical, on the energy issue. I'd really appreciate that, because I think while we understand how extensive this work has become and how good it's become, I don't know whether it's really got across to the whole set of councillors. And I'd be very delighted if you got the recognition, officers, for the whole quality of work that you're doing, because you deserve it. As regards the issue of disability, I would ask, Chair, if we could look at disability in a future session. Half people in poverty are either disabled or otherwise in problems. And the Disabled Facilities Grant is part of the solution, and it should be extended to heating as much as it should be extended to a whole range of other equipment. It would cut down costs of care and health costs. So there is a very valid reason that we should look at it, and I hope we can do that in future. So really I'm saying, could we look at that area? Could we look at rural poverty in the future? And thank you so very much, officers, for the tremendous work that you're doing. This poverty panel is working as hard as we can to support what you're doing, and thank you for it.
Thank you very much, Mike. So just looking at what you've said there, are they the two, because this is something that we'll probably be looking at the future, at the forward plan item, but is that what you're saying, that the disability and rural poverty are items that you think we should be putting onto the forward plan? Because we can just touch on that again on that item, or are there other things that, yeah,
I'll be grateful, because when it comes to fuel poverty and food poverty as well, disability and the frail elderly are the people who are most incapable of actually doing much about it. They have to depend on mechanisms to either gain grants or to reduce their expenses. And when it comes to energy, you can kill older people if their homes are not properly heated. And that's of serious concern to me. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mike. Were there any particular officers you wanted to ask about that? I'm just looking to see. I know Joe's got a hand up. I don't know whether is this in relation to what Mike has just said, Joe? Is Joe with me?
Hi, Megan. Sorry. Yeah, no, it was just kind of reassure Mike, I think, that the Housing Task and Finish group that he mentioned has met several times. I've been quite heavily involved with that, as has John and Tim Childs. And actually the new team, the new Housing Task Force team, has come as a direct result of that Task and Finish forum. So I just wanted to sort of offer that as a point of clarification.
Well, yeah. According to our website, which I always believe implicitly, it's only mentioned that it met in the 21st of September 2021. So either the website's not up to date and we're therefore not aware, or you've all been meeting in secret, which isn't exactly transparent to the rest of us. But please, Joe, let us know what's going on.
Yeah, no, it's not been under the cover of darkness or anything, Mike. You're all right. I suspect the website just needs updating.
Yeah, well, so do I. Please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks, Joe. Okay, right. So we've got Councillor Golden. Oh, sorry.
Chair, sorry, it's Jodie in private sector housing. I've just looked at the Disabled Facility Grant data, and we haven't actually done any heating for under a DFG this year, but we obviously do have funding for that. we tend to use a discretionary Healthy Homes grant to support some of our residents, and I think Martin spoke about one case that we're helping with one resident with their heating. So yeah, we do have discretionary and statutory funding available for first time heating. So
okay, thanks okay. Very much. Thank you. Yeah. So Councillor Rowland, Jack, thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm not a member of the panel, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to
I'm just doing people in order because people have been just waiting so long. So and people dive. I find this meeting, people dive in and out of it. So you can't always take, because people, when you're in a meeting, sometimes you suddenly remember you want to say something that somebody else has commented on. So I think it's good in this meeting, which is relatively informal, for people to just come in as and when. That's what I feel. Thank you, Jack. I'll let you speak now.
Well, thank you. Almost forgotten what I was going to say now. Thank you. 2 points I wanted to make. It was mentioned earlier about heating oil and the reliance, especially within the rural areas, on that. I just wanted to bring people's attention as well that there's a vast increase in rural crime revolving around this particular subject as well. Because I heard on Radio 4 very recently a poor woman that had just had a delivery of a considerable amount of heating oil, and overnight criminals had actually siphoned off the whole lot, and it cost her about £1,000. So I'm just wondering what we can do perhaps to publicise about the dangers of rural crime in that respect, and what extra security people might be able to take to protect that supply. The other point I wanted to make was I was going to be asking this before Joe Garford touched on the subjects about the stock quality survey, and it's good to hear that it's started. I suppose my concern, if I've understood it correctly as well, is just revolving around the actual logistics of that survey, because of how much work's involved and how much resource can actually be applied to it. Because I understood as well that the survey is being carried out town by town. And I also heard Joe say, though, that there will be a concentration on what's perceived to be the perhaps the worst stock that needs investigating. And I would hope as well that rather than going around town by town because of the resources needed, whether we can actually identify across the whole district potentially the worst ones that need the immediate attention in that respect, to see exactly what remedial work is required. So I don't quite know how the logistics are working out on that, because I understand the targets for somebody carrying out X number of surveys per day is quite quite daunting, is what I've heard, and I don't know if I've heard that correctly, so I would appreciate some clarification around that.
Okay, thanks, Jack. We'll bring Jo in. I know she's got her hand up, so perhaps she can address it.
Hi, Jack. Yeah, the stock conditions survey, you're quite right. The bulk of the surveys will be completed in a geographical fashion, and that's purely from a point of view of we're trying to do the stock condition survey as robustly but in as timely a fashion as we possibly can. And obviously the best way to facilitate that is to keep the surveyors in one geographical area so that they're moving around and they're not driving all over the district. However, the caveat to that is that the first 50 surveys, to give us a bit of a litmus test, the first 50 surveys, we have been through our open housing system, and we have selected the top 25 frequent flyers, as we call it. So that is the people who are recording the highest number of repair requests to their property. And at the counterpoint of that, we have also selected the 25 homes who have got the longest amount of time since they have asked for a repair to their property. So therefore, people that we perhaps haven't been in and seen their property for a number of years. So that's the first 50. So that's going to give us a bit of a litmus test. It's also going to give us the ability to test all the systems, to test the surveys, to make sure that it's giving us exactly the information that we want it to give us. And then you are quite right, though, after that, we will go to a more geographical split across the district. And that's purely for, as I outlaid before, that's around cost, deliverability, and trying to reduce the impact of having surveyors driving all over the district. There is still a desire that this will be done in 12 months. So it's a very quick programme. But they won't be doing loads and loads and loads of surveys a day. But what you need to understand is that we have got 9 surveyors on the ground every day. So there will be lots of surveys being done every day, but they won't be cramming them in. These are very, very in-depth surveys that will be happening. So does that answer your question? Is there anything else you'd like to know?
I'm just trying to work out in my own mind what I mentioned about the logistics. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but when you said the target is to complete it within a year, is that feasible?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's why we've got so many surveyors on the ground. There is a 6-month window where if there are any that are lagging behind, we can do those then, because obviously the other thing that we need to consider, and this happens quite a lot with some of our other sort of statutory things that we have to do, is that we will get a certain number of refusals by tenants who don't want us to go into their properties. And unfortunately, we then have to go down the legal route to say that actually this is a requirement for us to come into your property to complete this piece of work. So we've had to put that additional 6 months in just to make sure that we can get it done most definitely within the sort of 18 months as a maximum. But the stretch target is to do all of them within 12 months.
Okay. Thank you, Joan.
Is that all right, Jack? Okay, thank you. Right, I'm going to have to. I've got Libby. Did you want to jump in on that before I bring Peter in? Because Peter will have to be the last speaker on this item because we've spent a long time on it. Although it's really important. Thanks, Libby. Yeah.
All I was going to say is we'll pick up the issue about crime and heating oil, and I'll pick that up with the comms. And when we're sending out literature, we will capture that to raise awareness.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Thanks for raising that, Jack. Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Faithful, Peter, the last speaker on this item, please. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a few. First thing, the comments about second homes. The risk is, I think, you might find that the more you tax people for their second homes, the more they're pushed to have it as a holiday let, which is a business. So they'll be paying business rates instead of their council tax if you push it up too high. And that's perfectly legitimate if they're letting out. And if they're letting out as a holiday let, you haven't got the residential accommodation. Also, I think it's partly connected with Councillor Disarham's comments on paragraph 4. I used to do my cooking and stuff in the kitchen with my woolly hat on because I refuse to pay electricity companies more than I absolutely have to. At one time, I had it at half a degree above freezing in the kitchen, so it makes a damn good reason to put the oven on to cook something. But I think people shouldn't feel ashamed to be putting on extra clothing or something like that. If things get too hot, I just put an extra sleeping bag on top of my bed and it's normal. I mean, I used to work with sheep out in the hills above Taunton, and you have to put on umpteen layers of clothing just to go out and work with the sheep. And to go into anything about warmer or above freezing, when it's snowing outside is quite comfortable. So, I think if people can get adjusted to saying, well, this is normal, the bills are going to go up. We know that, and there's not a lot we can do about it. So, encourage people to accept that we need more, accept a lower temperature in the house. But I think if we can connect with, as it says in paragraph 4, whatever, part 4, really connect with the people and see how we can help them to make their money go further. Anyway, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I'm just looking to see if any of the officers want to respond to that. Yeah, the thought that well, does any of the officers, do you want to respond or not?
Sorry. I'd like to respond, please.
Yeah.
I know I shouldn't, but
no, go on.
If you're old, you can't just do what Peter Faithful recommended. I'm sorry, you die that way.
Yeah, well, and I was thinking when Peter was speaking, I mean, it's a good point. If you're relatively healthy and you're not disabled, and you're not very young and not very old, that might be all right to put extra clothing on. But for children particularly, you have to be careful. For older people, you have to be careful, and they need that warmth and a certain temperature. So nothing's ever quite as straightforward as we'd like it to be, is it? But I know that's, it might work for some people, but not for everybody. But thanks for your comments, Peter, much appreciated. Oh, Jody, I've got Jody with his hand up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, we've noted Peter's comments. It is about giving those tips to residents and getting those messages across, and it's really for us to help those residents where we can. So, we recognise those comments. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So I'd just like to. I'm just looking at the actions from this item, and I'm looking particularly at Libby's summary and key considerations on her paper. And there are some things there. I mean, we were going to talk about lobbying the government after the spring budget. I got that written down. Recommending to council to lobby government for more support with energy costs. And the thing that Marianne mentioned, I'm just looking in my notes. Marianne, can you help me out here? Is Marianne still with us? No, I don't think she is. Is she not here?
No, she's had to leave, I'm afraid.
Oh, right, okay. It was the point that she made earlier that we were going to lobby the various councils on, and I thought I'd made a note of it and I haven't. I'm sorry about that. But you'll have a note of all these, won't you, Sarah? So what I was.
It was about the council tax, I think, Megan.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, so if we can recommend all those things to be looked at. And where appropriate to take to council for further, for council approval. I think would that be all right with everybody? I haven't got a list of them in front of me, I'm afraid, but if we can get them together, Sarah, after the meeting, and then decide which needs to go to council, because I think this lobbying really does need to be done as a priority on various issues, not just one or two. So thank you for that. And thank you everybody that's taken part with this discussion. It has been very long, I know, but really important and much appreciated. And I just repeat what Councillor Allen said about the officers. It can't be said enough that you work hard and you do your best with the limited resources that we have. So thank you to Sharon, Martin, Jodie and Libby for that. So if we can move on, and I realise we haven't got long. If we could possibly aim to finish by 12:30, is everybody happy to just hang on without having a break? Can we just carry on? I don't know who that's got a hand up.
I raised it for the next item.
All right, okay. Yeah, well, we've got to have a presentation first, Bruce. So the next item is item 7, the poverty dashboard presentation. So I'd like to welcome George Whitlock and invite him, Sharon and Libby to give any presentations or comments that they'd like to. And once again, if you can just wait until the presentations are finished before you ask any comments or questions, I think that'll be the best way of doing it. So thank you, George, and I'm sorry you've had to wait so long.
It's all right, no worries at all.
Okay, thank you.
Everyone see my screen?
Yeah, yes,
Cool.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. So it's actually Sharon first. I'm going to start off
right, okay.
with the presentation. So when we first started looking at the dashboard, we wanted to build something that would gather data and outcomes through integrating with our firm step forms, as well as allowing us to easily identify what's going on in the district at a glance, rather than having to compare lots of different data sets manually. And there's a large amount of work building the background tables to be able to extract the data from individual databases. So a thank you to George, who's been the person building it and putting it all together. So this first page, as you can see, is contents page and has, we've got a space there for wording, where we can detail the data sets we've used, explanations, disclaimers, etc. And that will be expanded as we add to the dashboard the different data sets. And this is our own internal dashboard. It won't be publicly available due to some of the data sets and what they show. And you'll see an example of why that is as we go through it. But we are still looking to make a publicly available version that will restrict access to some of that more sensitive data. So at present, we've got council tax arrears and council tax reduction caseload. We've got our housing benefit caseload, household support fund and financial resilience data. We've also got some other data running in the background, such as council tenants rent arrears and a couple of the DWP data sets. Those pages aren't available yet, as we are still working on them. Data sets are going to be updated on the 1st of each month, and that's going to show what the situation is at that fixed point of time. And we are going to be adding in further data sets in the future. But as there is so much in there already at the moment, just based on what we've got, we wanted to make sure that what we already have, it's presenting correctly, and that we understand what that data is telling us before we add in more. And we also want to make sure that what we're using is relevant, as there's a lot of data available out there. So yeah, we just need to make sure that that's telling us what we need it to. There's also some areas around financial resilience where our cases aren't completely finished yet, but we wanted to get what we already have available in there so that we can start to see some of the outcomes. So the first page we want to show you is the key headlines. And this is being split into 4 areas. So we've got financial, housing, employment and health. And each area so far has just got key headlines pulled out from individual data sets. And as we add in more data sets, we'll be able to pull out more key headlines. So on financial, you can see budgeting is currently the highest root cause of hardship and poverty. How many households we financially supported in the last month. But out of our household support fund, we will be adding in our other discretionary pots in there as well. The average debt of those needing extra financial resilience work. Under health, we've just so far added that 41% of residents requesting extra financial resilience support are disabled. Mental health and physical health are the second and third highest reasons, root causes of poverty. in housing, we've got, we know that 6% of our tenants are in arrears, and 19% of those in receipt of housing benefits are restricted by local housing allowance rates. And again, we'll be able to consider external data sets and how they can build into those figures, such as if the DWP data can give us a figure for those universal credit cases subject to local housing allowance rates as well, so we can have that bigger picture. And for employment, we've only got one in there yet, because we haven't finished, and again, we'll be looking to add in further key headlines in that area, such as how many people are in work poverty, and how many of those are full-time or part-time employment. And in the middle of the page, we've got the number of people living in poverty in the district. Again, that's purely based on the data sets we've built in so far. So that figure is likely to be higher and is going to change as we add further data sets in. So the total number we've got living in poverty is 2,615. And the people in absolute poverty also count into the relative poverty figure. So then they're not, it's not 4,600, it is 2,615. We've also added in a people at risk of falling into either relative or absolute poverty by either £10 or £5 brackets, just so that we can start to understand the numbers of those at risk of falling into poverty as well. One thing that we did have to take account of in the data is that we did have to discount some of our benefit data. So, for example, our passported benefits cases, we can't count those all as we don't know the exact income those residents have, and that's because for benefit purposes we only need to know that they're on job seekers allowance income based, for example, so we wouldn't need to collect details about their other income such as maintenance payments or child tax credit. So there's not currently a true income on our internal data sets, but we need to look at how we can work around that and how we can build those cases in. So for all of these key headlines, what we want to be looking at is a means of seeing the direction of travel on a month by month, such as colour-coded up and down arrows, and that way we can easily see possible areas of concern that might need further investigation through the individual data sets on the interactive map or timeline that George is now going to show you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Megan. Yeah, so we've got two sections here available, which is the interactive map and the interactive timeline. First of all, I'm going to go through the interactive timeline. There's a lot of data on here, but the great thing about these dashboards is we can break this data down and have a look at the individual data sets in a bit more detail. So what this does is this looks at the last 5 years and it plots different caseloads that we have available to monitor. So we've got our council tax reduction caseload, housing benefit caseload, we've got DWP data that they provide, so that includes universal credit, different benefits. So we're able to monitor those over time as well. So what we can do is we can have a look at CTR caseload and we can have a look at that over time. So what I've put on here is we're starting to put on a couple of key dates. So the first key date is when East Devon started to migrate over to universal credit, which was in July 2018. And we've also got the key dates of the lockdowns. So so that's on there as well. So if I pull up a couple of the data sets here, so we can see that at the top 2 lines there, we've got our council tax reduction caseload at the top, and our housing benefit caseload below that. And we can see that in July of 2018, our housing benefit caseload started to reduce at a steady rate, and that coincides with, as you can see at the bottom here, when our universal credit caseload started to rise. And universal credit caseload was starting to rise at a fairly steady rate until we had the coronavirus pandemic, which saw a spike in unemployed benefits, as well as our universal credit caseload. And then on top of that, our council tax reduction had a constant rise from that first lockdown, and it's only just started to plateau off a little bit. So we're able to have a look at those data sets in a little bit more detail. So yeah, we can see recently, so the DWP data, the data is currently only available until November 2021. They're always a couple of months behind with their data, but our direct caseloads, they are up to date. So as of March 2022, we can see that there was 8,266 CTR claimants and 4,208 housing benefit claimants. But the data is currently showing that there has been a decrease in the number of people claiming unemployment benefits, as well as a decrease in universal credit claimants. However, our council tax reduction caseload hasn't really been dropping off. So this is likely to suggest that although people might be going back into work, either they're not going into the same roles that they were originally in, or they might have seen a reduction in work hours or a reduction in pay. So that's what that data can show us. We can also see, if I just add in a couple of the other data sets. Here we go. So these are our data sets that are in relation to disability benefits. So we've got attendance allowance, disability living allowance, employment support allowance, personal independence payment, and limited capability to work. So we can see that the personal independent payment, which is the green line up here, that has been increasing constantly over the last 5 years. However, the other disability benefits, which you'd expect people to migrate from one of the other disability benefits onto PIP, those benefits are staying fairly steady. So we're seeing that there is an increase in people becoming entitled to these different benefits. So we're seeing our caseload changing constantly over time. So that's what we can see on this one. So yeah, that will update every month for the data sets that we have available. So this is having a geographical image of poverty, I think, is really important, and we've been able to develop this page which displays all of our different data sets by postcode for East Devon. So what we're able to do, we've got all these different data sets on the right hand side. They're exactly the same as the timeline, so we can see these over time, but we can also see these on this map. So if I start off, so I can click on here, and so this shows of all those people that we've measured it in poverty in East Devon, where they are. So we can see there are clusters around our big towns: Exmouth, Sidmouth, Seaton, Honiton, towards Exeter and Axminster. However, there are people living in poverty in those rural areas. So that's what that data can show us. But we've also got the ability now is we can add in additional data sets, as well as going into a bit more detail on the location. So if we focus on Exmouth to start with, so I can go up to Exmouth Parish and we can zoom in. So this will give a better idea of where poverty is distributed in Exmouth. So we can see there's quite a large cluster towards Exmouth town, as well as out onto the eastern side of the town. But we can directly compare this data with our different data sets. So we can have a look at, of those in absolute poverty, we can have a look at where council tax arrears are as well. So there's a lot in Exmouth, but we can see that if there is a black and red on the circle, it means there is people living within that postcode that are in poverty, as well as people living in that postcode that have council tax arrears. So we're able to start being able to focus work on specific areas where that need is. So we can have a look at absolute poverty against where applications for our further financial support are coming in, and we can still see there's quite a large cluster down in the Exmouth town area. And because Exmouth is split up into the different wards, there's also the ability to go further down. So looking at Exmouth town ward in particular, we can see that there's 210 households living in absolute poverty, as well as nearly 100 people applying for further financial support. So we're able to see that down towards the harbour here, there are certain postcodes that have a very large amount of people living in poverty. So we're able to now target work, so we can run reports off this data, which we can then give to the benefits team and the financial resilience team, so that they can start targeting that support in maybe the areas that need it. Sharon, have you got anything further to add on the interactive map and what it can tell us?
No, I think you've covered that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I hand back to you, Sharon.
Yep, lovely, thank you. So as there's a lot of information in the individual pages, we're just going to focus on a couple of those today, just to show you how we can go into further depth on specific areas. So this is the financial resilience pages that show all our data captured by the financial resilience officers as they're working through the cases. And again, just need to make you aware that all these cases aren't finished. That's why some of the numbers won't add up as we've been entering data as we go along. And it's also only data since mid to end of November 21 when we switched on our firm step form. So all of the cases we've done before haven't yet been recorded into the dashboard. The work obviously is extremely complex. It can take time due to the individual situations, and we won't close cases off until we've got the final outcome. And this isn't about the emergency payments made through Household Support Fund. This is just capturing the data on that further in-depth work that the team is doing. So as George has already highlighted, Exmouth is one of the areas where we get the most requests for help from. And we can see in the bottom left that single and single parents are the highest group needing support. And as shown on the key headlines page, believe, I cannot see it now, is it budgeting? Mental health.
At the top there.
Yeah, sorry. Budgeting, mental health and physical health are the three top root causes for hardship. We've also just started to add in the poverty level into individual pages. So at this stage, it doesn't break down into relative and absolute levels. But if we go to the page 2 for the financial resilience outcomes, we can see that we've referred nearly 100 cases to ECO. I'll just wait for it to load.
There we go. Hopefully it'll load. There you go.
Thank you. So we've referred over nearly 100 cases to ECO, and total savings they found for residents is £10,392 for 13 households. But again, that's not the figure, the total figure that was mentioned earlier in the energy briefing.
Yeah, I'll just add in there, Sharon, once this dashboard's updated, which happens on a monthly basis, that figure will then reflect the overall costs that were reported in the earlier report.
So citizens advice area is still blank, and again, that doesn't mean that we're not working with them. We work very closely in partnership with them. It's just that they usually get our debt or DWP appeal cases, and that means they're going to take a lot longer to resolve. We do get updates from them, and they're still working on our cases that we've referred across to them since the form went live. So at some point we will have data to put in there. You can also see that of the cases which have been completed by the team, on average, they have reduced expenditure by £22 a week, increased income by £47.60. So residents' average savings are residents are better off by £69.60 a week, which equates to £3,619 a year. Again, we can also look at just those who are in poverty, and we can see that the teams managed to reduce the rent or council tax for those. So 7 cases have had their council tax debt reduced by £439, and 2 cases have had their rent arrears reduced on average by £2,465, and that will be likely through making use of discretionary funding available. And again, we can go into further detail and look at those households who are in receipt of disabilities and in poverty. So we can see that for those cases, ECO found 4 households average savings of £1,860. Oh no, sorry, yes, 1,860. So as we mentioned council tax debt earlier, George is going to show you the council tax arrears data.
Yes, so this is the council tax arrears data that we have available. This is taken on a monthly basis from our academy system. And what this data is currently showing us is that the majority of those in council tax arrears are in bands A, B and C. And at the moment we have 2,239 different council tax accounts which have arrears. And down here we've got we're looking at the arrears by ward, and as I mentioned on the map, Exmouth Town, that area around the harbour in Exmouth, that's where a lot of the poverty was seen, and we can see that it's also where our highest level of arrears are, with nearly £250,000 worth of council tax arrears split between 326 different accounts in Exmouth Town. And what we do have the ability is to click on Exmouth Town there, and we can see that of those in Exmouth Town, the arrears are in council tax bands A and council tax bands B. And we can see that of the 326 accounts there, only 82 are in receipt of council tax reduction. So that's somewhere where we might want to have a look, understanding why there is that mismatch. Are there people there that can't afford their council tax, in which case they might be entitled to CTR? And we do as well have the ability to click and have a look at of those that are in poverty. So again, we can see that there's 57 accounts there that fall in poverty, so they've got a low weekly income. However, 24 are currently only receiving CTR. So there is a bit of further work there to try and get an understanding of why there is that shortfall, and are there people living in that area that are entitled to CTR that aren't currently claiming it. So that's the data we can get from our council tax arrears. And Sharon, I'll pass back to you for further actions.
Okay. Yeah, so for further actions, along with continuing to develop the dashboard, building a lot more data sets, we're also going to continue with follow-up work. So as George has touched on earlier, we'll be looking to understand why those council tax reduction rate remains high, even though universal credit and unemployment figures are dropping. The areas where there are those discrepancies between council tax arrears and council tax reduction in payment, and why that is, and if we need to target support in those specific areas, how we do that effectively. We are going to be reviewing our council tax reduction working age scheme this year, ready for next year's, and we're going to look at basing that on the data the dashboard showing us. We've got to understand those reasons why some residents in poverty aren't in council tax or rent arrears. is it possible that perhaps those residents are using all their income to pay the rent and council tax but don't have enough left for essentials? And again, exploring what types of further data we can be adding in, and if external organisations such as Citizens Advice will be happy to share some anonymised data so we can build up that bigger picture. We've got the EPC register and linking energy and fuel types into the dashboard and onto the map as well, so we can compare data sets against each other and see at a glance. We've got discretionary housing payment and exceptional hardship funds to be developed. And as part of that, we'll be looking at our policies and our working practices in Revs and Bends, especially to ensure that they're supporting those who have been identified on the dashboard as living in poverty. We're going to be obviously feeding back any areas of concern with the panel for further consideration and discussion, and continue to develop all of that partnership working to address any areas of concern. Again, working with our partners, Citizens Advice, Eco, health teams that we've already started to build links with, and start building in reviewing our cases that we've completed, just to make sure that they're not falling back into poverty or hardship, so that we've effectively, so that we've done what we set out to. And I'm sorry I've gone a little bit over 12:30, Megan, but I'm happy to take any questions. Well, George and I are happy to take any questions and suggestions. Sorry, we kind of rushed through that a little bit.
Oh, I'm really sorry, because it's such an important item, this. We've been waiting with bated breath for this for a while, so it's really good. I didn't know whether Libby wanted to add anything or not, or you all right with Sharon and George, Libby?
Thank you. Yeah, no, really delighted with the work that Sharon and George have done on getting this off the ground. Just to emphasise, it is still work in progress. It is highly complex, but you can see how we can start to use this data to really help inform future interventions, strategies, and to inform the work of the poverty panel. But yes, it is still work in progress. So. That's it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you ever so much. It's a huge amount of work. Yeah. So we can quickly go on to Councillor Desarum, Bruce.
Thanks. Yeah, it was, I think that's been an amazing, absolutely amazing presentation. Could I ask that it gets shared in a ward for Exmouth, particularly ward by ward, so that members can know more about it? Because I note that it's not going to be necessarily publicly available. And I wonder whether I would indulge the committee's indulgence to pass a recommendation that the ones that were listed, Exmouth Town, Axminster, Littleham, that they will be receiving support. Whether this committee could recommend to Cabinet that, based on the data that we get, that we would do everything we can as a committee to recommend that those towns that are on that list that we just saw a couple of moments ago will absolutely be guaranteed a targeted support. I know that, or the whole district will, but I felt that one of the recommendations I'd make was that the ones specifically highlighted on that list by George, I think a short time ago, will be guaranteed some form of targeted support, so that residents will know that that they are being looked at and dealt with. If you think that's possible, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Is that possible? To target support like this? I'm always thinking about the resources that we've got. So, we've got to be realistic, haven't we? So Sharon or George, anybody wanting to comment on that?
Yes, so from a benefits point of view, we will be we're going to be looking at some take-up campaigns and how we can, especially in those areas that were mentioned about the council tax reduction, how we can get down into very detailed depth and highlight those people, so we can target certain households, and that's why the map won't be available publicly. So we will be doing targeted take up on some of those higher areas, but we do need to understand why that is as well. So it won't be like straight away, because there might be a reason why those people aren't claiming that the council tax reduction. So we do need to understand that a bit more, and this is data's only just starting to come out to the levels that we've got it now.
Yeah, and thanks, Sharon. And I just relating to what Bruce has just said as well about sending it out to the councillors. I just feel a bit wary of that, because if we do that, and I don't know what you feel, we don't know where that's going to end up, that information. And we know it's not publicly available information at the moment. So have you got any comments on that, whether we should be sending it out to the councillors?
I think we could probably give very high level data on certain wards, but detailed information we wouldn't be able to because of GDPR. So it's very easy to identify houses and properties. So I don't think we'd be able to give out in-depth detailed information.
No. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. I notice I've got John. Mike, if you don't mind, John, just speaking. I don't know whether you want to comment on that at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, thank you. I mean, a very impressive piece of work, and be a really useful tool to use in our quest to tackle poverty. I suppose a bit anxious that how we publicise it at this moment, because as has been indicated, it's still work in progress, and there's still some areas to complete yet. But apart from the geographical information that it provides, there's also clear indication in terms of our targeted work around budgeting. Mental health came up, and one other area that I've forgotten already. There's all change the screen, but there's some themes there that we can target, as well as the geographical areas. I think once we're fully confident that the dashboard is drawing in all the information that we require, but very, very impressed. I think it's going to help us immensely with the work that we're trying to do. Yeah, thanks, John. I agree with that. It's brilliant, and I know I've got experience of George's work in the past from a few years ago, so I know how good he is at doing things like this. So thank you, George. Well, Sharon.
You're very welcome.
So I've got Councillor Allen, Mike. Thank you. I know we're going on, but we'll try and speed up in a minute.
Yeah. All I wanted to say was that this is really magnificent, helpful display of information, easily understood, and I reckon that it would be helpful if the key headlines and the trends were communicated to council and cabinet, because they are so very helpful in terms of looking at policy. I do not think we ought to go public with anything below ward level, and even that needs to be carefully attuned to the number of households. But certainly ward members ought to be informed of their particular situation, even if it's under Part B confidentially. I'm just astonished at how clear and well this has developed. I wondered if we couldn't sell it to the actual approach to other people and use it as an income stream, because it is such a good dashboard, and it's beautifully designed for proactive work, not just checking on performance. It's excellent. Thank you so much for doing it. That's my lot.
Thank you, Mike. Well said, and I fully agree with what you said. I'm just looking to see if we've got any other questions. So I just want to ask George and Sharon and Libby. So in future, how do we look at this? You say this is done on a monthly basis. So how does do you envisage coming back to the poverty panel with updates every so often, or how do you envisage it working?
I'm happy to jump in on that one if that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, currently the data is updated on a monthly basis. We have been working with Strata, and we have recently put forward, and it's been approved in the budget, of upgrading our Power BI capabilities so that we are then able to display certain data on our website. So that would be those key headlines and those trends, and then we would have this one which has that more detailed data that will be kept internal, but we will have the ability, it will be approved for April, but it will take Strata a month or two to test and get the system implemented. So we will be looking to publish data on the website, and those key headlines, those trends, and the data that we can will be published on the website for people to see, which councillors can then go to get the data. And if that more detailed ward level is needed, that's data that we can provide.
Okay, so that's still the sort of internal information, isn't it? That's not the publicly available information. That's just for members to view, presumably.
On the website, it will be for public to view. So that was the intention, was that we would have key headlines and those trends available. I know Devon County have a very similar tool that they use where you can have a look at data over time, and it does have key headlines available. But they're looking at that possibility of that more internal data, where that's published and how that's done. That will need to be discussed.
Right, yeah, okay. So what I was asking was whether you're happy to come back to future poverty panel meetings to discuss, or is that not necessary? I'm just putting that out there. I don't know whether John wants to respond to that or not.
Megan, do you want me to come in on that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we will update poverty panel again. And obviously, as George has highlighted, the ability that we can have data put on our website, sometime post April. So yeah, happy to bring back further update as we add in more data sets, and and we start to build up more patterns on trends. As more data sort of builds into that information, we'll start to pick up more themes and patterns that we can feed back. There is obviously absolutely issues over GDPR, data protection, and the sharing of that data. So there will be limits on what can be provided, but certainly patterns and trends, that's not a problem. Sharing high level data.
That's great. Thank you, Libby. Well, thank you all of you for that presentation. And if we can move on to the final item, which hopefully will be pretty quick. Is that all right? Oh, somebody spoke then. So it's item 8, the forward plan. So a copy of the forward plan was discussed at the previous meeting, was circulated to members with the agenda. I'd just like to know from members whether there are any further items they'd like to add to this list. And then secondly, to prioritise in what order we should discuss them at future meetings. I'd also welcome comments from officers both about the content and priorities. So I don't know whether anybody's got any comments on that. Yeah, I've got Councillor Allen. Mike, first of all.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. I did mention the whole issue of disability.
Yeah.
It ties in with the different design of houses as well. And we've got a forward plan request for planning colleagues to come and talk. So
yeah,
it's partly to do with how we can help those who are disabled who aren't able to work, and it's partly to do with the actual design alterations for housing. The second thing is that I do think we ought to look at rural poverty issues, and it struck me that in the dashboard the one thing that might be possible is to pull out some rural as opposed to town issues and see if there are any common issues. So those are my two requests, please.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. We'll certainly get that on. So I've got Councillor Chapman next, Maddie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's been an absolute cracking meeting, Megan. Really, really good. Really enjoyed all the presentations and a lot of information. Really, really good. And I agree with what Mike is saying about disability and getting the housing team to speak to us. I have another concern at the moment, which maybe John Goulding will be able to help with. And that is across the country, and with the rising costs, it obviously puts a lot of pressure on families, and there's been a sharp increase in domestic abuse. I know our police in this area are really, really stretched, and domestic abuse has got quite high. I do have a concern about this. We've spoken about this before because it impacts on whole families. And I know we work with the county council, but we haven't had an update since halfway through the pandemic. I was wondering if perhaps, we could get some more information, whether there is enough safe housing, because obviously once the family splits and you've got the housing, the finances, it's an absolute minefield as well as being very, very sad. So if I could, I would like to find out what is going on there. I know the police are really stretched at the moment with domestic abuse. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Maddie. Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, another really important issue. So we can add that to the list, certainly. Yeah. And then I've got Bruce.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much. Yes, going back to what we touched on earlier, perhaps digital inclusion sessions, because obviously if we want the council to push things out digitally, we need to know where we stand with that. So going back to the original plan, it actually talked about numbers of digital inclusion sessions held in community centres, sessions held for older residents. So I'd welcome an update on those sessions and a development of the new business plan, which was going to go, I think, to the Housing Review Board. And I think we would welcome the opportunities to hear about that. It was under our item 4.2, develop a new business plan stroke strategy for a further council affordable housing programme. Now, this was going to the Housing Review Board, but I wonder whether we could touch on it because we touched on the other item 4.3 of identification and reduction of energy consumption in today's meeting. And so we are virtually covering off objective 4 of the plan. So that's what I'd like to hear going forward, if you think it's suitable to bring forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. John or Amy, are you able to comment on that, develop the new business plan? It was going to HRB, I can't remember anything about that.
I could comment on that, Chair.
Thank you,
So one of Joe's objectives is to produce a business plan for the Housing Task Force to cover off the work that the task force are undertaking. There is also a need for a new or an update to our current business plan for council housing. That will go to the Housing Review Board as part of their remit. So there are pieces of work that we could, once we've done the work, we could bring it back to the poverty agenda, the relevant poverty panel, the relevant parts of that work. And since Bruce raised it earlier, the digital inclusion issue is a big feature of the poverty action plan. I see it's referred to in 11 different places when I did a word search. So absolutely right. We should be perhaps using that as perhaps a bit of a theme for a report coming back to your meeting. Domestic abuse data generally goes to the Community Safety Partnership, but again, if members are interested, we can bring a summary of that data to the panel. And one thing I would suggest that we need to look at for the forward plan, we looked in depth today on heating, insulation, and associated issues, quite rightly. Perhaps we want to broaden that out in future to the other kind of cost of living type issues. I've just seen a Resolution Foundation report looking at the cost of living, published in March, I think the 8th of March. So we, as a panel, if members want to look at that broader cost of living issue, including heating, fuel costs, food, etc., we could bring something forward on that at an appropriate time.
Yeah, okay, thanks, John. That's really helpful. Well, I've got I've got the original working the forward plan in front of me, and then I've just been adding on all those other things. So the top one was receive a report on a poverty dashboard. So we've done that today, and I know that will be ongoing, but at least we've seen the way that that's being developed. And then Helen Wareham has said, although she couldn't be with us today, she said at the May meeting she's happy to do a further report on how poverty features in the service plans. So she's happy to do that in May if everybody else is okay with that. Allotments is mentioned here, scoping exercise for allotments, how the council could help people with financial planning, and that's partly being done already, I expect, isn't it? With the work with Libby's team and so on. And contributions from external speakers, including Exeter Community Energy. They would have been here today if they could have been, but it may be that in future they may want to do a session, just on what they do. I don't know. Simon Kitchen from the Devon County Council, because he came and talked about food poverty a few months ago, and the Department for Work and Pensions. And then Andy Wood has said that he's happy to come and talk about how poverty can be tackled through the council's own investments and planning. I think that's really quite an important one, especially in relation to Mike's suggestion about the disability, the design of houses and so on. There's a whole load of things in planning that I think we should just unpick a bit, really. And then LGA publications, plus all the things that we've talked about today. So I don't know whether anybody quickly has any thoughts about what the priorities should be in those. If not, I can talk to some of the officers and try and work out what we think the priorities are, and then send them out and see what people think before the next meeting. I realise everybody's absolutely worn out with this long meeting. I'm sorry about that. It's another 3-hour meeting. But I apologise. It's been really, really useful, though. So, I mean, if nobody's got any other points to make, shall we just take those away? I'll talk to some of the office and see what's, and you can still write, members can still write to me and say what you think the priorities are for the next few months, and take it from there. What do people think? Are you happy for us to just leave it like that? Yeah. I would have liked us to gone through all the various dates and sort of pinned them down. But after May, we haven't got any specific dates for meetings because we have to wait until the annual council to do that. So, yeah, if that's all, thank you very much to everybody.
Just want to say, Megan, thank you so much for what you're doing in both the housing situation with John and also this poverty panel. What we've got now is a really increasingly effective support for those people in poverty from all the officers, and it's brilliant. Thank you, all of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for that, Mike, much appreciated. So the date of the next meeting will be held on the 30th of May, Monday 30th of May. And as I've said, further dates for the rest of 2022 will be arranged following the annual council meeting, and the meetings will start at 10 o'clock. So that brings our meeting to a close. I'd like to thank everyone for participating, including any members of the public watching online. Can I remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live. And until then, your comments will be live to the public. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Megan.